Production funding for Behind the Headlines is made possible in part by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Shelby County Schools Superintendent Dorsey Hobson tonight on Behind the Headlines. I'm Eric Barnes, publisher of the Memphis Daily News. Thanks for joining us. I am joined tonight by Dorsey Hobson, Superintendent, Shelby County Schools. Thanks for being here again.
Glad to be here.
Along with Bill Dries, senior reporter with the Memphis Daily News. We'll talk about all kinds of things, from charter schools to iZone to ASD, the Tennessee 10 Ready troubles with testing and so on. But I wanted to start with East High and some of the things that the school system has going on there. You've opened a new center. Talk about East High and some of the real transformation you're pursuing.
So very excited about what's going on at East High School. A couple years ago, it was on the priority list, and we set a bold and ambitious vision to transform it. Starting with increasing the academic rigor there, and then we've also added a number of high-dollar training programs that we think are going to lead to kids having opportunities to come out of school and have some high-wage jobs. It's our T-STEM Academy, obviously. So yesterday we cut the ribbon for our biodiesel training facility. We have a strong partnership with Cummins and other transportation companies, and just very excited about what's happening there. We saw, I think, double-digit gains across the board in terms of the academic performance last year, and just very excited about, the transformation.
Some years ago, I remember there was a slogan for then, I think it was Memphis City Schools. I get a little confused, consolidation, post-consolidation, about every child, college ready. Is this a return to a different focus with a focus on more traditional vocational jobs such as diesel mechanics and so on?
Yes, so we know that, all of our kids are not going to go to college. And I think that, we spend a lot of money on our career and technical education. So the board really challenged us a couple years ago to be more focused. And so we've identified a number of areas where jobs are and where they're likely to be over the next decade or so. And it's important for a district like the Shelby County Schools. We have so many kids in poverty. We often talk about, we have 40,000 kids who live in households where the income is less than $10,000 a year. And so when you're in that suffocating and generational poverty, if you graduate from high school, you have a skill set that's going to allow you to go out and get a job that's going to allow you to be able to take care of your family. It can be a game changer. So, for example, East, again, the partnership with Cummins is really incredible. Kids are learning, biodiesel technology there. We also have a focus on aviation training there, and that's part of our broader strategy throughout the district. So we're working on totally revamping the CTE program, because we know that
CTE,
that's the Career and Technical Education program. So we know that, for kids who don't want to go to college, we want them to be prepared to be work ready.
How does it jive with the Governor Haslam, outgoing Governor Haslam, introduced Drive to 55, where every kid, and he's talked about a lot over the years, everyone in Tennessee, not just kids, can get a 2-year degree, community college, technical school, or so on, at no charge if they meet that. Is this in sync with that, or is this the idea that actually you come out of high school ready to go and work as a biodiesel mechanic or something like that? So,
very excited about that approach taken by Governor Haslam. I think that we put out our 10-year strategic plan several years ago, and we want all of our kids to be college or career ready. That actually aligns very closely with what the governor's vision for Tennessee is. So I think all the stars are lining up together. We're going to create opportunities for kids. Obviously now you can get free community college. We're trying to create situations where kids can also attend, high school kids attend some TCAT campuses and different vocational centers, so that it's just a seamless transition, pre-K through 14. So given our strategies and given the state strategies, I think we're pretty well aligned.
Yeah. Bill Dries.
You also have a vision for East High School as it's making this transition to a T-STEM school, and you're phasing in the grades there. But there were a group of interns who were working with Looney Ricks Kiss over the summer who took a look at doing something with the grounds around the school, athletic fields, more of an entrance to it. What do you want East High School to become in terms of what it represents about the school system?
Well, so East High School obviously is right in the center of the city. You know, there's such a rich history and tradition there. And, you know, we essentially wanted to be one of the premier educational facilities in the state of Tennessee. And I think when you're trying to have that kind of transformation, in addition to what's going on inside the school, you know, you also want to make sure the grounds, you know, look great. You want to also give opportunities for all the citizens of Memphis and all of our students to be a part of a first-class facility. I think, for example, you know, we talked about it. My good friend John Atkin, you know, has transformed Collierville High School, and it's a wonderful facility. But we think all kids should have access to those types of facilities. So, in addition to transforming what's going on academically, we also want to create a first-class sports complex so that not just the East High School students, but all students in the facility are able to use it, and then the community is able to use it as well. And I think that with the transformation that's going on in the Midtown community and just that area of town, it certainly is well positioned to be something that I think everybody can be proud of.
And you're talking with private donors as well as looking for capital on the school side of this. Yeah,
the interns did an awesome job, right? You know, we talked about kind of the vision, and so they said, well, let's put that on paper and give you some ideas of what this could look like. And, you know, obviously the board was very excited about the possibility. You know, we've spoken with private donors. There's a lot of, you know, history with East High School, and so there are a lot of alumni there. Charlie McVeigh comes to mind, and other people who want to invest in East. And I think we also are trying to figure out within our capital dollars, like what skin in the game, as it were, could we put in it. But I just think at the end of the day, you know, learning environments matter. You know, athletic facilities matter. And so when you have an opportunity to do a total transformation and then show what's possible and then create a model, it's something we certainly want to make sure we push forward with.
When you talk, we mentioned the Collierville High School, which is a $100 million facility, funded. I mean, they are their own school district, so much, if not all, of that is Collierville municipal money. What sort of capital budget do you have now? Because you've got, Collierville has 5 or 6 schools from elementary to high school, something like that. Most of the suburban schools. You've got how many schools that you have to spread your capital budget across?
So we have about 165 school buildings that we operate, in addition to all of the, you know, administrative buildings and other buildings that we operate. And so I think the context is we have about $500 million in deferred maintenance, just stuff that we wish we could get done. You know, roofs leaking, floors buckling. Last year we received probably the highest capital award we've ever received from the County Commission, and we appreciate it. I think it was $90 million. But within that $90 million, we have to try to address deferred maintenance. We've got 2 new schools that we're trying to build too. So, you know, while, you know, we, you know, certainly have been supported by the County Commission like never before, our needs are extraordinary, you know, which is why we always talk about being even more efficient, you know, tearing more buildings down that, you know, are in very bad shape. But then we don't want to just tear buildings down. We also want to build new school buildings to the extent we can, because again, I think learning environments matter. And I know Bill was there and followed it very closely. I think about what we did at West Haven a few years ago. Took 3 schools, all in the bottom 5%, all in very bad shape, all greatly underutilized, closed them, built 1 new facility. Now that school has only been open 2 years, but the last 2 years, it's been recognized by the state of Tennessee as being a reward school. So that's the kind of thinking that we like to.
Reward school meaning?
It means in the top 10% in terms of growth of all the schools in Tennessee.
And you have closed, and you've been superintendent 4 or 5 years now.
5 years.
5 years.
Yeah.
Give or take, how many schools have you closed?
I think we closed 26 schools in that.
And how many more do you think are on the list?
No, so I mean, I guess the way we look at it, and we're doing another strategic regional analysis. I mean, I think at the end of the day, and you got to put the whole context out there. You know, you've got, you know, but we also have another 60 charter schools, and then there are probably another 30 charter schools in the ASD. So all in, you're talking about 250, 260 schools. That's just too many schools. I mean, we're still talking about probably maybe 125,000 kids. So I think ideally, you know, if you took politics off the table, if you took who operated the school off the table, I think ideally you probably could close around 40 or 50 more schools. You know, maybe build 15 to 18 more schools. Then you get kids in great learning environments, and you let whoever's doing the best job educating kids operate those buildings, and then you get more efficiency, and you get, you know, better learning environments for kids.
But closing the number, you talked about taking politics off the table. I mean, closing that many schools, people had talked about that and nothing had ever happened. To get 25, 26 schools closed, and the parental pushback and the people who remember the neighborhood pushback and individual politicians, how did you get that many closed? Because I think a lot of people thought it wasn't possible.
Well, I think a couple things. I think that, you know, the merger, you know, really created you know, the conditions where, you know, you had to do something, right? Like, I mean, we had a $100 million, you know, budget gap. You know, proud to say now we have a $20 million surplus. You know, but I think at the end of the day, when you have, you know, just that dire financial situation, you have to do something. But as I've always said, closing schools should not just be about saving dollars, because you don't really save enough money just closing an individual school. It should be about, you know, being efficient and creating the best learning environments for kids. You know, if I've got 5 schools and they're all in the same neighborhood and they're all raggedy, and they're all under-enrolled and they're all performing poorly, why not have 2 schools and you get more resources inside the school to support kids? And when I want to clarify too, so when I talk about the 40 or 50 schools that probably should be closed, I'm talking about district-run schools, charter schools, and the whole potato, as it were.
Just and based on, and I'll go to Bill, but based on their location, and you're talking about too many schools in one area, and based on just the deferred maintenance and the state of the facility and the number of kids. Those are I know there's a lot, but those are the 3 things that you seem to look at.
I would certainly say the enrollment. First of all, how's the school doing? You know, what are the student outcomes, and then what's the enrollment, and then what's the condition of the building would be the main factors.
15 minutes, Bill.
So Alsea and Goodlet are the 2 new schools that you're building, and you're going to be able to consolidate other schools that are near those schools into the new Alsea and the new Goodlet. How many of those situations do you have left in the school system at this point? So
we have you know, doing the analysis now, and hope to share with the board probably late September or October. But I think now the issue becomes, you know, how do you work with our charter, you know, operators in the ASD, you know, to make this happen in a way that's best for kids. I'll give you an example, Bill. I think about Dunbar. You remember Dunbar? Mm-hmm. We talked about closing Dunbar, and you know, we didn't, and it was mainly because of the condition of the building. Now, needless to say, the community rallied, and now they're a level 5 school, and that's a good story. But I think about the condition of the building is still bad. And then right around the corner is Hanley Elementary, which is operated by the ASD, or Hanley K-8. The condition of that building is bad. You know, how do you create a scenario where you can combine those 2 Orange Mound schools and get the Orange Mound kids a new learning facility? Mm-hmm. It becomes even more complicated when you're talking about ASD operates this school, and Aspire, Hanley's in there, and then Shelby County Schools operates this school. So, you know, that's the situation where I'm talking about taking the politics out. Like, what's best for kids? How do we give kids the best learning environment, and how do we support kids in the best way and take the politics out of it? And that's just something that, you know, we just have to keep working on.
And I believe out of the 9 new charter schools that were approved by the board just this month, 3 of those new charter schools are also in Orange Mound.
Yeah.
And that was a part of the board's discussion. But when a charter school applies, you know, your staff doesn't go into whether a community is saturated or not, even though it's fair game for the school board members to discuss.
Yeah, I think that, you know, we have got to, you know, be much more aggressive in our legislative agenda around charter schools. And I say that because, you know, I think that when the charter school law first started years ago, there weren't very many. Then I think there was a cap of maybe 50 throughout the state. You know, then the cap came off, and so the charter school issue really is a, you know, Shelby County Schools, Davidson or Nashville issue for the most part, because we have most of the schools. And so there just are not clear rules, statutes, regulations on how they should be regulated. And I think that, given where we are now, it's time to take a look at that, because we have some outstanding charter schools, and I think if you're a great charter school, we should support you and we should continue to have you grow. But then we have some charter schools that don't do very well, and you should be able to say, all right, this area over here has 10 schools too many, so we're not going to let you open up over there.
What is the process, just a little, because we're close to this, but for people who aren't, the process by which charter schools are closed from time to time, is that done by the Shelby County School Board, by your office, or by the state?
Yeah, so the Shelby County Schools has a right to close any charters that it authorizes, if certain things aren't met.
For instance?
I mean, if it, like, all of them have contracts, right? So, like, if you're not meeting performance targets, or if your finances are not in order, you can close them. But I mean, the reality is that it's equally as difficult for a school board to close a charter school, as it is for them to close a regular school, because there's still community buy-in and support. So I just think that, given where we are now, unlike we were, 12, 13 years ago when the charter law came out, we'd have to have some, reasonable regulations that are focused on what's best for kids.
And let's do this, I'm doing it a little bit backwards, but again, for people who aren't as close to this, the approval process for a charter school, again, that goes through the Shelby County Schools and the school board?
Yep, so what happens is charter, CMO or whatever just submits an application, and the state has a rubric that lays out, you look at the finances, you look at the academics and all these things. And so if you meet the rubric, then technically, the board has to approve them. Now, if the board does not approve the charter, then they can appeal, to the state, and then the state has a final say so. But if the state accepts the appeal, then the charter can fall under the state as opposed to the district. So, I mean, the process is fine. I think just the factors that school boards and authorizing agencies should be able to look at to determine whether or not a school should be able to open just needs to be re-examined.
And we mentioned ASD, just a quick definition. That's the Achievement School District, which was introduced by the state to take over failing schools statewide. They took over a number of, what do they have now, 10 to 20 schools?
No, they've got about 27, 28 in Shelby County.
In Shelby County.
Yeah.
And often bringing in charter operators under the ASD. So it's state, Achievement School District, a charter operator, or they run them. They have not, and they've been around for what, 5 years now?
5+ years, yeah.
Okay, you have no control over those ASD schools?
Not at all.
Okay. Just a little lesson for those who we need.
It's a lot.
Some bullet points that we put up. There's been some controversy with the ASD. To stay away from the controversy, but your working relationship with them is what?
So I was excited when they hired, my former chief of schools, Sharon Griffin. I think that, the ASD has struggled, and I think everybody would admit that. But I think, the best chance that they have to succeed is to go out and hire a leader like Sharon, who's proven in the turnaround space. And from my position, I want the ASD to succeed because they're still educating our kids, right?
Because a child could go from an ASD school to a charter school to a Shelby County school. I mean, all the patchwork of different systems. The child can move through all of them.
Exactly. I mean, if you are in an ASD school, you're more than likely you live in inner city Memphis, in a neighborhood that's probably been neglected for a long time. And so it doesn't help the city if you're in a perpetually failing school. I do think that, I read an article the other day where the governor kind of reflected on their ambitious approach back then. And I think that while it was the right, some of the right goals, I think that they may have been a little too ambitious in what they thought they could do in the time they thought they could do it. And their goal was to, take schools from the bottom 5% to the top 25% in 5 years. And I think that there was a miscalculation about some of the social and emotional needs that many of these kids have. I mean, poverty is real here. I mean, at the end of the day, it's never an excuse, but it creates barriers, and the way to get over those barriers is you need additional resources. It's not just we're going to drop a new teacher and a new principal here and paint the building and now everything's going to be great. You got to have long-term strategies to address the whole child and the social and emotional needs of the kids, as well as the educational framework that you use to get the best student outcomes.
Bill.
So let's talk about 10 ready testing, and as we talk this week, Governor Haslam is back in town this week to hold a public hearing about that, roundtable with educators. And you, as well as the director of schools in Metro Nashville, signed a letter to the state about this. But then you also told the board that, look, there's got to be a standard, and this is the standard. So while there are problems with the administration of the test, we still have to hit the mark in terms of where the standards are on that. So what should happen with 10 ready testing, given the problems we've had now for several years?
Well, first of all, let me just commend Governor Haslam, because he's been, very, very committed to improving public education in Tennessee, and we've seen a lot of improvement during his tenure. I think that, with regard to the test, I'm a big believer in accountability. I think that, you have to have an objective way to measure what's going on in schools. If schools aren't doing well, then you have to be able to use that data to make adjustments in terms of your strategies, in terms of a number of things. So I am 110% in favor of accountability. Having said that, though, you got to have a test that works. And I think that, given some of the challenges, the reason that Sean and I drafted that letter was not to say let's not have accountability, let's not have testing, but let's make sure that the measure we're using is reliable. We make so many decisions based on what happens in these test results. They're personnel decisions, whether schools open or close are based on those results, and on and on and on. So you need to be able to say with a straight face to teachers and community folks, well, look, if the test says this, then it's accurate. So I think, as we've struggled to get the test right over the last, few years, our thinking was let's pause and get it right. There are other measures that we could use to kind of keep the score as to what's going on in schools that we know are much more reliable. So I think until we get that right, there's always going to be a question in the back of people's mind. What does this mean? And I think it's just disheartening. I've spent a lot of time with teachers and in classrooms, and as teachers say, well, super, why are we doing this? And kids are all this anxiety, and we teach to the test, and we do all these things, and we're doing all this stuff, and it's not even leading to a reliable result. So, I think that I've heard that for a long time. I want to stand up for our teachers. I want to stand up for our community. So that, in my mind, seemed like a very reasonable approach. I do commend the governor and Candace McQueen for, listening to the community to get feedback on how to, have a test that people can believe in. I'm sure ultimately we'll get there. We have to get there. But right now, we can't say for certain that, when kids go to test in, April and May, that they're going to get it right. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a concern.
Well, and also when Tennessee was part of Common Core, mm-hmm. and there was this movement in the legislature mm-hmm. to get rid of it because the argument was that it was a federal standard and states should be setting the standard. Yep. Never mind that it actually was a state standard. Yep. You were pretty adamant that you thought, yeah, let's go ahead and stick with Common Core. Do you have some anxiety about what the political debate might be around testing, that it might get into whether or not we should even have this measure of accountability?
Well, I think that we are where we are right now because of politics, right? I think at the end of the day, it was the right thing to do to say, let's set high standards, let's measure those standards, let's have and all Common Core, really is just college-ready standards. Like, we want to have a bar, we want to have it set high, we want everybody to try to achieve it. And there's been some tests that people have been testing these standards on, for years. And I think what happened was when the politics got to be about Common Core and Obama and all these kinds of things, they backed away from, I think it was the Park assessment, which states have been using for years. Now, it's not perfect, but they worked a lot of kinks out. And so then we decided we need to have our own test. And so I think that in an effort to address some of the political concerns and get a test that, would satisfy the politics, we picked something that wasn't tested, and we're going down this road. So, but I think anytime you're talking about an issue as important to our state as education, politics are going to be involved. But I commend the governor for being steadfast and saying, we've set standards, we're going to have high accountability measures. I totally support that, and I think that if there's ever a move to move away from high standards or from accountability, then there'll be a whole lot of people, including myself, who will push back very hard on that.
With just a minute and a half left here, when you look back at what happened at Trezevant with grade fixing, accusations of grade fixing and so on, what could your office have done better and done differently, and how is it, or has it changed to make sure that kind of thing doesn't happen again?
Yeah, I think that you obviously always can get better in everything. I think that many of our processes were manual, and I think that using technology to double check and triple check when transcript grades are made, and making sure that there's a way to go back and align the documentation to what happened would be something that we certainly are trying to improve on. And I think more training. And I think finally, one of the things that we learned was that there were apparently people who had access to different sign-in, log-in information that the principal should only have, so safeguarding that information certainly would have made things better. But I also want to say, I think that when something like that happens, you never want to see that happen. But we have 99.9% of our hardworking teachers and educators who go to work and do exactly what they do exactly what they're supposed to do every single day. So I don't want to let a few bad actors stain the whole bunch.
All right. Well, we will leave it there. Thank you, Dorsey Hobson, for being here. Thank you, Bill, and thank you for joining us. Join us again next week. Sit tight for a second. Thank you.
We don't want to